All right, thank you so much, Michael. And of course, in studio with us, Nyeri Senator-Mutahi Kagwe, a man who is not new to the public eye. He has previously served as the Minister for Information and Communication between 2003 and 2007, and he was also the Member of Parliament for Mukuru-Ini constituency. Senator Kagwe, many thanks for joining us in studio.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you for inviting me.
All right, so let's begin with just what people of Nyeri, some of the people of Nyeri had to say, and that connotation of being the eyes of Nyeri, and that now you seem to have closed that eye.
It's an interesting introduction to the morning.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I think the first speaker is the one who kind of lays the foundation of the discussion in terms of the role of the Senate. I think that the biggest single problem that we as senators, not just Mutahi Kagwe, we as senators have been facing is the understanding of what does the senator do? What does the Senate do?
Because we've had one here saying the governor is sick, so the senator should step in and do
Exactly. You've just had somebody saying that, the eyes of Nyeri, now that I'm the eyes of Nyeri, when the governor is sick, I should step in and do his work. It is not constitutional. The senator cannot step into the governor's role. In fact, if the governor wanted somebody to take over, it would be the deputy governor.
All right, and we'll be talking later on as whether you fulfilled your role as a senator, first of all.
Absolutely.
And then, probably educate Kenyans and citizens and residents of Nyeri as to what your role is as a senator. But before that, let's get to know a little more about Mutahi Kagwe and how he got to be Senator Mutahi Kagwe. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Mukuru-Ini. I was actually born in Othaya.
Right.
That's where my father was working as a foreman, and I was born in Karima. But then, of course, our home was then in Mukuru-Ini. So I went to school in Mukuru-Ini, Kehata Primary School, and then after that, I joined Kagumo High School, again in Nyeri, before going to where I spent 6 years. Then I joined the university.
All right,
the University of Nairobi.
What did you study there?
I studied commerce. I did a bachelor's degree in commerce. And later on, I went to USIU, where I then did my master's degree in business.
What year was that?
I graduated in 1992 from USIU. Yeah, when did you graduate?
That's when I was born.
Oh, I see.
And I just now revealed my age, unfortunately.
That is when I did. But of course, when I was doing my master's, I was actually working for the Standard newspaper.
Already?
Yes. So I was. I did evening schools, Saturdays and evening school. Like some people still do, even to this day.
It's a serious struggle.
Yeah.
So talk to us about then how you got your first job. That was still in university.
Well, when I actually, my first job was actually in Viva magazine. Because what happened is that there was a small little advert in the Standard newspaper that Viva magazine was looking for an advertising manager. So I applied for the job. And then Salim Lon, I don't know whether you know Salim Lon. Salim Lon was then the editor-in-chief of Viva magazine. And Viva was the biggest magazine of the time. And then, so I got a job as the advertising manager for one of their publications that was called Mashambani. So I used to sell advertising space for chemicals and all sorts of agricultural products. And it is from that base, when I was working at Viva magazine, that I joined the Standard newspaper. And I joined the Standard as an assistant advertising manager for the Standard newspaper. And then I rose on to, by the time I left the Standard newspaper, I was a commercial director.
Right. So several years in advertising and commerce. How did that eventually morph into politics?
I think there's a sense in which when I was the commercial director of the Standard newspaper, we used to do a lot of corporate social responsibility, including raising money for poor children, raising money for football. I got involved in a lot of CSR. And I think there's a little bit of the fact that I got so involved. In fact, I remember in 1992 when there was a lot of hunger in Kenya, just like about now. We did a big project that was called Operation Kenyans for Kenyans, raising money from Kenyans to help Kenyans. So I think I was always interested in public life. I was always interested in the destiny of public. So, and I would not say that that is why I went into politics, because I started working in 1981. In 1982, I had my first harambe for a Riro Mutoade nursery school.
So it's just in you. You have that.
I think I was always
just
interested.
to reach out to people.
I was always interested in people. Yes.
All right. So your first stint in politics, how did that happen?
Well, I ran for the Mukurweini seat in the year. Well, let me go back a little bit. In 1992, when former President Kibaki declared that he's going to be the DP candidate, I worked for that campaign in 1992. So I started getting involved doing PR for him, even as I was still working. You know, so I got involved with politicians, even when I was still in the business, on the business side of life. But even if I were to go even further back, as a 13-year-old primary school child in Kihate Primary, I was a troop leader of the 32nd Nyeri troop.
Oh, really?
Yes. And what we used to do at the time, in addition to keeping rabbits and those kind of things, we used to have gangs of kids who used to go and help old ladies at night. We would clean up for them. We would even dig their shambas, you know, and so on and so forth. So in terms of the interest, you know, people's interest and being interested in seeing people do better and become better, we started off a long time ago. Way back.
So 1992, here you are working on Mwai Kibaki's campaign. How did that work for you?
Well, it taught me a lot, you know, because, you know, political theory is one thing, and talking about politics is one thing, but getting actually involved in politics and, you know, digging in and seeing the problems, the challenges is quite another.
Many say it's a dirty game.
Well, I don't know whether it is a dirty game or some people in it are dirty, you know, because then from 1992, by 2002, but in the year 2000, that's what I made up my mind. I decided this time round, I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm not just going to talk about supporting people in it. Why am I just sitting around and looking at situations, doing nothing about them? And I remembered years and years ago when my grandmother once asked me, what's the difference between you and me? We just hear and talk about it. We just sit with you and talk about it. If you're a real person, if you're real gutsy,
get out there.
Get out there and do it. So the year 2000, I decided then I am going to go into politics. And I ran for the Mukurweini seat and won the seat. So I first went to Parliament in the year 2002.
Right. So that is how many years back in politics so far?
Well, from 2002, I lost elections in 2007. I went back as a senator. So in terms of active politics, you could say 15 years going on now.
All right. And just before we continue, what is involved in running for a political seat, especially in the losing part? Let's talk about 2007, because the winning is easy. How does it feel to lose a political
Actually,
seat?
winning is easier. When you are in a seat, keeping the seat is a lot more difficult than getting a seat from the outside. You know, it's what we call the challenges of being in office. And if you look at almost every election that you go into, even if you think about Obama and his first campaign and his struggle in the second campaign, it is always a little bit like that because you get challenged when you're in the seat rather than when you're coming in. But coming back to your question, I think that when I won the election, I won because there are certain things I was very clear-minded about what I wanted to do for the constituency. And I went on to do them. I went on to do the hospitals I wanted to do the markets I wanted to do the roads I wanted to do. But I forgot one thing, that development and politics are two different things. And there's a tendency to imagine that because you have done the roads, because you have done the hospitals and the schools, automatically you should be re-elected. That's number one. Number two, if you remember in those years, when you are a cabinet minister, you are also a member of parliament. And if you check back, you will see that the turnover of ministers, people who are ministers in the cabinet, the turnover was very high. Because what tended to happen is that you get so busy with your ministerial work that you forget that you have a constituency to take care of. And that is why I am a great believer and a great supporter of separating the members of parliament and the cabinet.
So the fact that you lost the seat in 2007 was mostly because of your role as a minister of information and communication.
Absolutely. I was all over the place. I was concentrating a lot on getting the stuff that we needed to do as a country. You know, the telephone systems, we were not connected on fiber. You know, I had to spend a lot of time trying to build a new fiber optic cable for the country, trying to look at the regulations and regulatory framework within mobile provision. Don't forget that we were calling at 75 shillings per, you know, people forget very quickly. You know, in 2005, you know, making a telephone call was very expensive. Right. 45 shillings local, 75 shillings overseas. You know, these are the things we are working on and trying to reduce that cost so that business can grow. So you spend so much time doing those kind of activities that you forget that out there are still people who want to see you.
Right.
You know,
and just a bit of clarification on what you said, that development and politics are two different things. Shouldn't they be one and the same?
They should be, but they are not. You know, in our country, they should be, but they are not. And I'll tell you, because, and it is not just Kenya, by the way. If you think about the Indian example, which I like to remember, there was a time India was growing at about 8.9% per annum, and Modi was removed from power. If you remember, in 2007, Kenya was growing at 7% per annum. Yet President Kibaki had a very difficult time getting re-elected again. So all I'm saying is that the fact that you are developing, the fact that you are building roads, you know, don't forget that those roads are not applicable to everybody. And there's a large crowd of people out there who will always feel left out, no matter what you're doing. You know, so, and even if you look at the situation in Kenya today, you know, Kenya is actually growing. Right. But if you ask, there are some people you'll go to, and they will not hear a thing. You can build the roads, you can build the dams, you can do all those things, but they still will give you a political problem. And
I mean, you know, many Kenyans would say the politicians come here and claim they've done, but citizens on the ground cannot see what they've done. But we'll delve into politics a bit later on. Okay. Let's talk about your family.
Yes.
You're a family man.
Yes, I am.
You're married with several children. Talk to us about when did you get married, first of all?
I got married in 1987, 4th of July.
Wow, that's way before politics.
Yes. I got married long before politics.
It's great that you remember the day, because many men do not remember these anniversaries.
Oh, I do.
And you'd be in trouble if you don't remember.
I remember very, very distinctly that it was the 4th of July, 1987. And since then, my family has grown. I have got grown children, you know, who are working. Right. You know, my son, Kagwe, works for the AU in Addis Ababa. Then I have got Joroge, who works for Citibank. All these are educated and left the house and gone off. My daughter is still in school. I've got two children who are still in school. My daughter and my son are still in school. But the rest are working. They are their own people. Right.
Yes. I mean, maintaining family and politics all together, how does that work?
It's not easy. It's not easy, and it is especially difficult on the family. It's obviously very difficult for my wife, you know, because first and foremost, she didn't choose to be in politics, but she just happens to have married a man who is in politics, right. You know, and it is difficult for families. And then you have got all this time that you spend in the constituencies. You spend a lot of time traveling for the benefit of the country and so on. And all that time is taken away from family. But I think one of the things that I have always believed is that there has to be a distinction. There has to be a line where this is family and this is public life. And I don't think that you should automatically integrate them, you know, into public life, because they have not chosen that. Right. And some of them may not want to be in public life. And I think that is a chance they have to get, is privacy that they have to get. But largely, my family gets involved in it. You know, when I ran for, when I go campaigning, they get involved.
Oh, really?
You know, they come campaigning and they go to their age mates and try and get votes.
Does it get personal, or do they get too defensive about you sometimes? Say, for example, just what residents of Nyeri had to say about you and your work.
You get
and, you know, you probably think, you know what, that is not true about the senator. So we go to defend
that is nothing. What you are told about, what politicians are accused of and the way they are attacked, that's nothing. Right. You are accused very personally. I think there's something that I've always told my family to develop. Yeah, and even fellow politicians, even those who are trying to get into politics, and they come and ask me, Mutahi, what advice can you give me about the criticism I'm going to get? And women get particularly sensitive about it.
Yes.
I tell them to develop what I call a pipe system. Put a pipe between this ear and this ear. Let everything that is happening pass right through, and it doesn't affect you at all. And even if it makes a bit of sense, just put a little stopper, you know, so that that stopper now stops. You listen to what is going on there. That makes sense. That is constructive criticism, and you listen. But if it is not making any sense, and it's just insulting you and so on and so forth, let it pass. It doesn't stick.
All right. And of course, you know, it might have been difficult for your wife, but she wasn't very new to politics because she grew up with a political figure as a father.
That is true.
This, the daughter of the late minister, John Michuki.
Yes, that is correct. At the time, in fact, at the time we got married, I was working for the Standard newspaper, and her father was an assistant minister, I think in finance. So she's not new to, you know, to politics. But it is one thing, although it is one thing to be simply the daughter of a politician, you do your thing, and quite another
to be the wife.
To be the wife of a politician, and then you are forced to go out and do things. Having said that, she has always been interested in helping people. You know, helping people, not necessarily from a political standpoint, but just helping people.
Right.
And she continues to do that this day. Yeah.
And I mean, you had, you know, for her, being the daughter of Michuki, you had rather big shoes to fill when you went into politics. And today the country and his family celebrates his fifth memorial since he passed away.
His fifth memorial since he died. And as you saw in the newspapers, there was some remembrance, you know, of the man. He was a great guy.
What do you remember most about him?
It's just that, as I said, having watched him and listened to him, I gained a lot from him in terms of political advice. And just what I was telling you a minute ago, the fact that you can get a lot of criticism, but you stick to your guns and you stick to what you're good at. I think that's the one thing that I can say I picked from him, and he would say, stick to what you want. Stick to what you can't run something on the basis of what everybody is saying. You must know what you want, and you stick to that, and you execute it, and you do it.
Right.
Criticism will always come, you know, from all quarters as long as you're in politics.
All right, and of course, I mean, he was known as a very no-nonsense man. Kenyans will most remember him for the reforms he made in the transport industry. What to you was some of the notable works that he did?
What, in political terms?
Yes.
I think, as I said, everywhere he went, you know, John Michuki was one of those guys, one of those men who went, wherever they went and did the best they could. And some of it, I mean, when you think about it, when he was Minister for Environment, you know, he started on things that people had never thought about.
Right.
You know, trees, you know, that were dangerous for water. He rehabilitated the Grove roundabout, if you remember, all that area that used to be a den of drugs, you know, foresting it, and just creating a proper environment for Nairobians and the rest of Kenyans. So every place he went and first of all took his time to study the situation, look at what's going on there, see what is most required, the greatest need there is, and then developed a system for execution. So he didn't rush into something and just start doing it the next day. He first of all took his time to study and know how to do it and how to sustain it even afterwards. All
right, and let's bring in Michael Gitonga to just take a look at some of the feedback that is coming in, especially from the residents of Nyeri, where Senator Mutahi Kagwe comes from. Michael, what feedback do you have so far?
Before we go to the feedback, maybe just to engage Senator and find out what are some of the things or qualities that you have learned from John Michuki. The country still remembers him for literally taking on some tasks, and he transformed some sectors single-handedly. Anything that you can say that you have done in Nyeri that you can say that this I learned from my father-in-law?
Well, I don't think you pick on a single item that you learn. Learning does not quite work like that. Learning is a state, is an attitude. I think what I can say is that what I pick from him more than anything else is an attitude. And the attitude is, when you are convicted that there is something that needs to be done, go right ahead and do it. And that's a strong thing because it permeates across life. And it permeates across all the tasks that you had and all the challenges that you face. For example, if I were to talk about Nyeri and what I would like to see in Nyeri, I have got a very clear mind about the things that I want to see in Nyeri County. Some of them I thought I can execute as a senator. But later you realize that's not your job. Your job is to execute work in the Senate.
Right.
You know, and if you look at the Hansard and you look at the Senate, you know, I have done my job as well as I could.
As senator?
As senator. In my job as a senator.
Okay. Seem to disagree.
We'll come to that in just a bit, and I want to look at the feedback. But before we move away now from just your personal life, Michuki came across as a very tough man, as a very strong man who was no nonsense, not even in the face of whatever trials. Now, as Mutahi Kagwe, who was going to take his daughter in hand in marriage, how was that? You know, talk us through facing him now as a father-in-law, going to take his daughter. And you know, men are very protective of their daughters.
Oh, absolutely, he was. There is no question about it. But I was also a very determined young man. You know, I wasn't about to fear. I was determined that this girl is my wife, and I love her, and that's a person I want to spend my life with. So I simply went there and I told him exactly that.
Okay.
And, you know, yes, he has got a very tough demeanor. You know, he had a very tough demeanor. But he also had a lot of kindness in himself. You know, he had a soft spot for young people across board. He could be your friend in spite of a very big age gap. And in spite of who he was very simple in that sense. And if you spoke to young men in Kangema and so on, my age mates at the time, they were all like that. I mean, he would take his time, and when he spoke to them, he didn't speak at them. You know, he engaged them, and you know, and had this rapport. And many times I've met him with some young person, just sitting down and talking and see if they are total and complete age mates. So in that sense, he wasn't always, you know, this hard-nutted crag.
I guess that's what all of us saw because of his role, especially as minister. And finally, before we move away from your personal life, what would you say, what role has your wife played in you, to where you are today? Well,
basically, she's been a rock behind. And when you are in politics, when you read public life, you need a very understanding, a very tolerant and understanding person. And that she has been. Very tolerant, very understanding, and very supportive.
They say behind every successful man.
Absolutely. Because you can imagine, for example, when you think about the kids, when you think about the family, if you are all out there in public, you know, spending all your time there, then the family would suffer. You know, and the fact that our family continues to be a very close-knit family is to a large extent, you know, my wife's work.
All right.
Because I'm always out there. Yeah.
They say behind every powerful, strong man, there is a woman, but something they forget to say is that in front of that powerful woman, there is a man. So there you go. This is the man right there. On a lighter note, now looking at the feedback, there is Ndongo from Nyeri who says, now that he is senator, why don't we see him on the ground? I guess this is in response to the fact that you're saying when you were minister, you are concentrating a lot on national issues to a point where you are away from.
And I think it's very important here, as I said, as I started. You remember, Michelle, when we started, I told you, the senators have had this singular challenge. This is the first time when people elected an individual in a very large area, who does not spend all his time in the constituency, but spends most of his time in Nairobi in the Senate.
Right.
You sit on Tuesday, you sit on Wednesday, you sit on Thursday, committees on Fridays. So most of your time is actually away from the county. Secondly, because let me just finish this. I think this is very important because of all this criticism that you get. The second thing is this: because of the size of the place that you're handling, when you are in one side, when you are in one corner of the constituency, people in the other corner of the constituency have no idea that you are there. For example, on Sunday I was in a darasha. Now somebody in Kabuta, somebody in Madeira, thinks you are in Nairobi or traveling some very far distant places, but you are actually within the constituency. This is the first time that you have got somebody called a senator within our constitution. Yeah, within our constitutions.
Right.
It is very difficult, and it'll take time for people to understand and appreciate that they cannot see you as much as they see the governor or as much as they see the member of parliament.
All right, and let me just give a few more feedback, but you'll answer this once we come back. And this is Dennis, who says, Kagwe is a solid politician. Are you eyeing the governor's seat? You're going to give us an answer to that. But what we'd also like to do is just bring in a few more comments from the residents of Nyeri. Shortly, we're also going to be joined by Professor Wainaina, Michael Wainaina, who is our resident analyst and also a political blogger, to also just join in the conversation. But before we do that, let's just hear a little bit more from residents of Nyeri on what they had to say about their senator.
There have been embezzlement of funds in Nyeri County, but our center have not questioned even a single allocation of our funds. From 2015, we had a failed health system whereby doctors in Nyeri County started their strike back in 2015, but our senator didn't question a single thing. It is very sad. We had coffee issues back in Madeira and Othaya and Mukroine, but we had no one to question the issues raising in this country. We had a measurement of 2.1 billion by the county government from the auditors general, but our senator didn't table a motion in Senate, nor question the governor.
Habari ya Senate, mimi hata naweza omba serikali Senate kitu kama Senate itolewe juu hata tuonage usaidizi wa Senate. Juu sasa hii Senate hata tunashindana ni aje. Mtu kama ni senator tulimuona siku ya campaign peke yake. Na sasa hata tujuagi kazi yake ni gani. Sasa mimi naweza omba hivi kama hii habari ya Senate, kazi ya Senate mimi hata tujui ni ya nini. Mimi hata ikiondolewa inaweza kuwa mzuri, at least hata nini pesa hii ya serikali yenye inaenda juu sana ikuwe itumiki.
According to Mr. Mutahi Kagwe, our senator, wakati alikuja anafanya campaign, alikuwa anatufanyia campaign, akatuambia atakuwa macho yetu, atakuwa akisaidia sisi. Na kutoka kati tulipatia kula na akachaguliwa na wananchi, hata siku ya leo hatujai kusikia maneno yake. Kazi yake ni kunyamaza tu. Hata kama sasa tunakogana huko upande ya daraja kwa sababu ya masiwa, cooperative society hawezi kutusikiza. Tumeandika barua na tumelaliwa kabisa. Hata zaidi sasa tunapeleka barua kwa anti corruption. Ndio tuone kama tunasaidika. Na yeye hakuna kitu anatusaidia.
All right, so there you have the residents of Nyeri saying it. And of course, something that's coming out very clear is we need to have a clear definition or a job description of what a senator is supposed to do, because maybe the confusion comes right there. And at this point, I want to hand back over to Michelle, but also joining us on the set is resident analyst and political blogger, and that is Professor Michael Wainaina, who's also just going to join in the conversation. But to start with you, Senator, you've heard what the people of Nyeri have to say. Maybe it might be a good time to give us a clear idea of what is your role as senator.
Excellent, excellent. I think this is where it should have started. You know, what is it that we do as senators? For example, you just heard somebody talk about milk, or like the issues of processing milk and so on and so forth. You hear somebody talking about the roads. You hear somebody saying that we don't see him much. This is because of what I had said earlier. The issue is that the job of a senator largely is to legislate. You know, you sit in the Senate to make law and legislate, particularly to do with devolution, on issues devolution. If you look at Article 96.3 of the Constitution, it is very clear, it spells very clearly that the Senate is the house that will deal with the division of revenue, basically resource management, discussions about how much should go to the county governments, how much should go, for example, from here, from this meeting, from this interview. At 10 o'clock, we'll be in the Senate discussing exactly that this year.
Yes.
Which money will go to which government?
Mr. Senator, I want to put this in context because since you sat here, you've been defending yourself and the Senate.
Not defending myself.
Not yourself,
your role.
Your role. Defending your role.
I'm not defending,
yes.
Explaining.
Explaining
the role of the Senate.
Good. Explaining the role of Senate.
Absolutely.
Let me ask, do you think that you as Senate have done enough to explain yourselves to the people.
No.
Because what you're explaining here, it's a lot of English, resource mobilization. And don't you think that one of the things that the Senate should have set itself as an agenda the first time they got in there is a plan, a civic education plan to explain to the people, this is who we are, and these are the kind of questions you should ask us.
I would not agree with you more.
Good.
All right? I would not agree with you more. I do think that we as a Senate should have done a much better job of explaining our role. But having said that, in fact, I would say that the entire constitutional makeup should be explained more to the people than has been.
Yes, but the people who are going to pay the prices yourselves.
Absolutely. And yes, of course. I agree with you.
Yes.
I have no quarrel with that.
And let me follow up that question and ask something. Every time myself, I feel myself explaining myself too much, Michelle. I ask myself, why am I explaining myself too much? Is there something that I'm missing? Is there something that is wrong? Senator, just the fact that the Senate has to really explain itself to us, the people, is it an indicator that it's probably is irrelevant? It's probably one of those things that we don't need because we don't even understand what it does. We don't even see these people. And there has been this discussion of, do we need the Senate?
Well, let me put it this way. The fact that you do not discuss, your pancreas every day, or the fact that you have to explain what the pancreas does not mean that you don't need a pancreas. It's
a very good explanation.
Absolutely. You've got a pancreas, and if you talk to the average person, you would have to start explaining to them. This is exactly what a pancreas does. A few minutes ago, you were explaining to us about medical.
Antibiotics.
You're talking to me about antibiotics. Now, whether we are talking about it does not mean that the situation is not there. The fact is that the Senate is a very crucial institution in terms of the devolved government system in Kenya.
Never mind that many people don't know what it does.
Give it a chance. First and foremost, you're talking about a period of about 3-4 years. In the life of a nation. That's a very short time.
But we've agreed that probably you people are not doing enough.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Now let's move on to something else, and I want to link your own political experience and the areas in which you have served with the discussions that we are having currently. You were Minister for Information and Communication, and you've been in communication for a long time. When you were talking with Michelle, you were explaining you've come a long way in this communication business.
That is correct.
Now, you're in government. Or you're in the party than in government?
Right now, I'm in the party
than in government. So you're in government, okay?
Yes. I am a strong Jubilee.
Mutahi, the former Minister for Information and Broadcasting and the former guy who was in information, may I inform you sadly that your government wants to snoop in on us?
No.
What do you think about it?
First and
I think just before you continue, Senator, let's begin with this, the bill that you had put up to Senate. That is the Cybercrimes and Protection Bill.
And
how that translates to the situation now that Kenyans are very afraid that the government wants to snoop in
them.
And their privacy.
First and foremost, every single nation today has a Cybercrime and Protection Bill. And I think that the way to look at the Cybercrime and Protection Bill is not to look at it as something that is against you, but something to protect you. Because today, you can go into your computer and somebody hacks into your computer, does whatever they want to do with your computer, get the information from you, and does with it whatever they want. All right? I'm not talking about governments. I'm talking about individuals. How many times have you go into the internet and you find Michelle there, there is nothing to stop you somebody from putting your head on something else, on some naked person or something like that. That is cybercrime.
And that's good. And that's good, Senator.
And these are the issues that we are faced with. There is a tendency. Let me tell you, there is a tendency to be very suspicious about government.
And we should be very suspicious about with very good reason. We have to be suspicious about government because every time the government wants to, Senator, the government wants to surveil on its people, every time the government wants to suppress its people, it makes a very convincing security argument, the one that you're making, okay?
Then it's for you.
Yes,
it's for you.
Yeah,
I
tell you, it's for your own good, okay? So they say...
Let me ask you, Anena.
Yes.
Let me ask you. Are you by any chance saying
yes.
that there should be no law
yes.
in regards to cybercrime?
I am saying that any law that is passed on protecting us from cybercrime must first and foremost respect our privacy and our rights as citizens.
If you look at the Cybercrime and Protection Bill,
yes.
the first thing it does say
yes.
in the preamble
yes.
is that this bill is to protect.
Yes.
To protect the citizens.
Yes.
It is not a bill
yes.
that is supposed to be a snooping.
Yes.
You know, open the door for the government to start
these gadgets we are being told.
Listening to your...
Yeah, these gadgets
no.
that is what they're going to do. Okay, there's a bill, and there are these gadgets that we are being told are being installed. Are those two related?
Technically not.
Technically not. So one is legal, the other one is technical. And the technical is not regulated by the legal.
It does. It is regulated because
yes.
it is illegal in Kenya.
Yes.
It is illegal.
Yes.
In fact, it is unconstitutional.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
For you to start snooping around with people
yes.
without the legal framework.
But we do know how much respect for the Constitution this regime has. So
that's your opinion. That's your opinion.
It may be my opinion, but
yeah.
you know, people learn from how governments behave. Over the last 4 years, there has been a tug of war between the executive and the Constitution, and people feel that the Constitution is under attack. So that when you tell us...
I don't agree with that at all.
You're in Jubilee, you may not agree.
I don't, not necessarily because I'm in Jubilee.
Yes.
I am also a Kenyan.
You're Kenyan.
I am a citizen of Kenya.
Yes.
I also want my rights protected.
Yes.
You know, I am not always going to be a senator or whatever.
Yes.
And not everybody I know is a senator.
Yes.
And in any event, if you're somebody who should be fearing,
yes.
it should be me because I'm in public life and it is my reputation
yes.
at stake. And
I'm glad you're concerned. I'm glad you're concerned.
Just before you continue, and the very fact that this is where we began,
yes.
There's a role of the Senate. The senators haven't really explained to Kenyans what the role of the Senate is.
Yes.
Same thing with this Cybercrime and Protection Bill and these new gadgets that are being installed.
Yes.
Kenyans don't understand what they are,
okay.
and nobody has taken the time to come out and explain.
First of all,
exactly
on the Cybercrime and Protection Bill, it has not been published.
Okay.
All right?
Yes.
The bill has not been published.
Yes.
Because what happened is that we went into public hearings.
Yes.
We actually published a version of a Cybercrime and Protection Bill.
Yes.
We went into public hearings.
Yes.
We heard what the public had to say about this bill.
Yes.
We are now in the process of republishing the bill.
And just a minute, what is the difference between the Cybercrimes and Protection Bill and the Computer and Cybercrimes Bill 2016? Because most of the content seems to be similar.
Actually, we combined all of them.
Okay. So you have two of them combined.
We combined everything. There's a ministry. There was a version that I had published myself individually as my bill in the Senate.
Yes.
There was also another one that the ministry itself had done.
Yes.
We amalgamated all those ideas.
Yes.
We looking at working with the matrix to see what is good here, what is bad here, and then of course we will subject the whole bill to the public and stakeholders.
One of the things that encourages me, Senator, is when you say that you're a Kenyan and you're also as worried about government snooping on us as every other Kenyan, and we hope.
I think globally,
yes.
we should never allow government to interfere with their life.
Yes.
Because nobody has that kind of knowledge.
So can we count on you as a senator then to make sure that the interest of Kenyans and their privacy is going to be protected as government makes arrangements for their security? Is that something? Good.
Absolutely.
Good. Let's move to something else.
You can
take that to the bank.
Just before you continue, let's take a phone call. We have Kanye who's calling in from Nyeri. Kanye, a very good morning to you. What's your question or comment?
Morning to you.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask whether the senator has been following these governors, like Nyeri governors. Because once they entered the office, the rat rate escalated with like 100%. How about that? Have they been following?
Maybe if you could just recap of your question. What do you say escalated?
It escalated.
What escalated?
Rat rate. Oh. Out in Nyeri outskirt.
Land rates. All right.
Land rates. Because like me, I was paying for 8,900 from when they entered the office, we are paying 49,000. Huh?
All right, Kanye, that will be addressed by the Senator. Many thanks for calling in. We also have Kadenge who's calling in from Mombasa. Kadenge, good morning. What's your question or comment?
Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Yeah, nataka kuuliza huyo mzee Mutahi Kagwe huyo. Huyo mzee Mutahi Kagwe asiwe na hasira, ajibu maswali kulingana na vile anatakikana.
Do you have a question? Una swali?
Nilikuwa nasema hiyo Senate hata hivyo, hiyo Senate ni kama hakuna kitu inafanyanga kwa sababu naona ni kama huyo mzee anarukaruka hizo vitu anaulizwa na huyo mwenzake hapo kando ni kama na hasira. Wacha hasira mzee, tufanye kazi, muone Senate vile mnafanya because mliomba kura, mkakuja huku mkatafuta kura tukawapa, lakini mkapotelea tu huko juu. Hakuna mtu anaonekana tena. Sasa ni campaign, you are coming back to us again. Jubilee has failed and it has already failed totally. That's okay.
All right, thank you so much, Kadenge. They're calling in from Mombasa, and very serious concerns here being raised. The first person was talking about the land rates, and the second person talking about you need to answer the questions that you're being asked without being annoyed. But I don't think he's getting annoyed, though.
Well, first and foremost, I am not annoyed at all.
I don't think he was annoyed.
On the contrary, I'm having fun. I'm enjoying myself. And the opportunity is great to have this opportunity to respond to those things. On the issue of the land rates, it is true that the Nyeri government raised the land rates. I raised the issue myself with the governor. And I said, I think the best thing to do is let us negotiate. Let us sit down with the landowners and plot owners in Nyeri and discuss how we are going to do this. The truth is this, is that the rates had not been increased over many years. So I think that what the government was trying to do, the Nyeri government was trying to do, is to compensate for the years that have not been paid. However, my view was that you cannot do that suddenly. You need to go systematically and raise it slowly as business grows. As a matter of fact, what Bonakanyi did not add is that it is actually a court case as we speak. So the matter has actually gone to court.
And just before you chip in, of course, we need to judge, so to say, the senator according to his track record. So you say the role of a senator is to legislate. What has been your contribution to the Senate and, you know, whatever contribution, especially to the people of Nyeri?
Well, you've just been talking about one.
The cybercrimes.
The cybercrimes bill. But I think, you know, the guy from Mombasa, let's respond to the guy from Mombasa as well.
All right.
Because I think that two things. First, let him not see my demeanor and think that I'm annoyed. I don't know whether it is you who is annoyed or me who is annoyed.
I am not annoyed.
But clearly...
Probably a little bit more aggressive in getting answers from a politician.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that we are talking aggressively does not mean that we are annoyed. But the second thing is this, and I agree with Naina that we have not done a good job. We, as a government, we have not done a very good job of explaining the various roles of the various offices. And I think that until and unless people understand, you know, what the roles are, we are going to continue getting criticism. You know, constructive sometimes, and sometimes totally nonsensical.
Yes. Let me talking about the guy who was saying you're annoyed, I don't think you're annoyed. There's something he has said that I would like to pick up in relation to something that you said. He has said that Jubilee has failed. Okay? That's what he said. Here, when you're having a discussion, you say there is a difference between development and politics. You say that you're in Jubilee.
I am.
You people...
A staunch.
Card-carrying member. Card-carrying member. Yeah. You people are singing development from here to the high heavens. Are you advising your own people? You have said here that development and politics are two different things, and you're saying you're in Jubilee, and Jubilee, the only thing that it is talking about is development, development, development. Are you advising your own people?
First and foremost, can we understand one thing, Wainaina?
Yes.
I did not say that the fact that you are talking development you should stop and just talk about politics.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
What I said was
Yes.
the fact that you are developing, and we are developing.
Yes.
You know, the kind of development work that is going on in this country
Yes.
is admired across the region and across the country.
Yes.
But the point, my bet was that the fact that we are doing that does not necessarily mean that we should not go out there and do politics.
This is a political season.
Yeah, it's
this is a political season.
And that's why we are out there.
Yes.
Campaigning for registration.
Talking about development, talking about 10,000 kilometers of roads, talking about electricity, talking about last mile connection, talking about whatever else you're talking about.
All those good things and true things.
And other people, Kenyans, feel that you are not dealing with the political issues that are going to be important to them during the election. You're not responding to the issue of corruption. Okay? Once the issue of corruption comes up...
Let's have the Senator answer that just before we bring in Michael.
I cannot even believe that you're saying that, Bono Ainaina, because when you think about it, when you think about the issue and President Uhuru's record on tackling corruption, where on earth did you ever hear of a government where 6 cabinet ministers were actually said, step aside, let's investigate these matters before you
a typical Jubilee defense. A typical Jubilee defense.
Let's bring in Michael Gitonga with a bit of feedback and any questions.
A typical Jubilee defense.
All right. Yes, Professor. We'll have to take a break now.
Gentlemen, thank you. Because of time, we may have to wind it up. Maybe I'll just give Senator a right to reply in regards to corruption. What has Jubilee done? Give us an answer what they have done. No, let him reply. Let him reply.
I don't know what he wants to hear about.
That people are in jail and money has been returned.
And the point is,
allow him to reply.
The point is, you know, the Bible says, you have got eyes and you do not see.
We see.
You have got ears and you do not hear. It is very easy to stand that and start saying they have done nothing, they have done nothing. The fact of the matter is this, that there is no government prior to the Uhuru administration that took as many steps as they did to fight corruption.
Okay.
And
I think we'll have, because of time, to wind up there. Final question. Are you defending your senatorial seat, or are you going for Governor Kam to...
I'll be announcing that decision in the next 10 days.
In the next 10 days. So we can hold it to account in 10 days.
In the next 10 days, I will be clear and I will make an announcement whether I'm defending or going for the governor.
The good thing is that media doesn't forget. We have this clip and we'll definitely be reminding you in 10 days.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll have to wind it up right there. Gentlemen and Michelle, thank you so much. That's person of interest, and because of time, we'll have to wind it up right there. And for those of us on KTN Home, we are now going to change, and Life and Style is just about to begin. On KTN News, we've got some news updates that are coming up in just a bit. And later on, we'll be talking about your money. But we're going to leave you with a traffic update. And this is on Uhuru Highway, where we can see the traffic inbound into town is still heavy. Outbound looks like it's well and good and flowing. We'll leave it right there. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.